Many of the videos on this channel show just how much influence test audiences have on upcoming films. When test screenings go poorly, studios tend to chop the film up, reshoot scenes, and shorten the runtime. This might make you wonder who these people in the test audiences are, and why studios even listen to them, especially considering that after reshoots, films often flop or turn out worse than the director's cuts that come out later. This impression mostly comes from the channel's format. In reality, all films go through test screenings, even major blockbusters and movies loved by the vast majority of viewers. For example, the Shawshank Redemption went back for reshoots after test screenings. The creators added a few new scenes between the characters and completely changed the ending, which originally wasn't happy. James Cameron, after seeing how test audiences reacted to his 5-hour cut of Titanic, shortened the film by an hour and a half and changed the ending too. As a result, Titanic became the highest-grossing film in cinema history at the time of its release. But today, we're not talking about movies that went through minor changes. We're talking about ones where test audience reactions were so harsh that the filmmakers had to reshoot at least a third of the film, which ultimately led to box office success. We won't be judging the quality of these films. Besides, no one really knows what they were like originally, except for the 200 to 300 people who saw the rough cuts at the test screenings. What we do know is that all of these films were well received by audiences and performed well at the box office. So, it seems like the studios made the right call by sending them for major reshoots after the test screenings didn't go well. Originally, Mel Gibson's Payback was supposed to be part of this video, since it's a rare case of a studio releasing two completely different versions of the same film. But the story behind it is too long, and the film didn't do well at the box office. That's why the story about that film was already posted as a standalone video. A similar thing happened with Justice League, another case where viewers got to compare two completely different films. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, directed by Doug Liman, was a very troubled action movie. Problems plagued the project at every stage of production. At first, Brad Pitt and Nicole Kidman were cast as the leads, but as production dragged on, Kidman had to leave Mr. and Mrs. Smith because of other commitments. After that, Pitt also backed out, but once Angelina Jolie joined the project, he quickly came back. Shortly after filming started, it turned out Brad Pitt had already committed to Ocean's 12. He was so eager to get close to Angelina Jolie that he forgot to mention the scheduling conflict. As a result, after a month of shooting, production had to be paused for 3 months so Pitt could film Ocean's 12. Because of all the casting changes and production delays, the film's script kept changing. Pretty much everyone involved tried to make their own edits and revisions. Rumor has it the script was rewritten from scratch more than 50 times, and went through several more big changes during filming. The result was predictable. The test audience got what felt like a collection of comedy sketches, with everyone goofing around and cracking jokes every minute. The only things people liked were the chemistry between the leads and a steamy bedroom scene, though almost none of that made it into the final cut. Not because of the test audience, but because the MPAA found the scene too explicit for a PG-13 movie. The film was sent back for major reshoots and heavy edits. The entire ending was changed. Originally, it was more intimate. The final scene, where the couple's kid shoots a doll in the head, was also removed. Most of the deleted scenes didn't even make it into the director's cut, which was only 7 minutes longer than the theatrical version. Whether the film got better or worse is anybody's guess now, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith grossed $487 million on a $110 million budget. The studio had long planned to release a sequel to the action comedy, but like with Hancock, the main problems were the increasing demands of the lead actors and their busy schedules. Every time the project looked ready to move forward, someone would reject the script and say it needed rewrites. Eventually, it just became too late. Steven Spielberg's Jaws was the biggest box office hit of 1975. It's often credited with coining the term blockbuster and turning summer into blockbuster season. But originally, it was a very troubled production that nearly got shut down several times. Spielberg was constantly on the verge of being fired, and when he wasn't, he was ready to quit himself. According to him, the set was such a mess that he just couldn't do his job as a director. While the studio wanted to fire Spielberg for supposedly not doing his job well, he tried to quit because of two actors who kept disrupting filming, Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw. Their hostility on screen looked real because, reportedly, they genuinely couldn't stand each other off-screen. The cause of their conflict was Shaw's problem with alcohol. Every day, Robert Shaw would get outrageously drunk and start pestering the actors and crew on set. This annoyed everyone, but because of his bad temper, no one wanted to mess with him. This went on for several weeks, until one day, Shaw started yelling on set that more than anything in life, he wanted to quit drinking, and that today would be the day he finally stopped. Hearing this, Richard Dreyfuss reportedly walked up to Shaw, snatched the bottle out of his hands, and threw it into the ocean. After that, Robert Shaw lost it and attacked Dreyfuss, nearly choking him. From that day forward, Shaw never missed a chance to mock Dreyfuss. He made comments during every scene Dreyfuss was in, calling him a wimp and a talentless fool, and sometimes even throwing beer cans at him. Spielberg, who was only 28 at the time, couldn't do anything about Robert Shaw, and the studio, which he kept turning to for help, just shrugged it off. This toxic atmosphere on set affected the final product. Steven admitted that the constant conflicts distracted him and made him focus on the wrong things while making the film. It showed in the test screenings. Audiences didn't like the movie. They found the fake shark funny, too slow, and totally unconvincing. After hearing all the feedback, Spielberg started persuading the studio to let him reshoot many scenes. Realizing they had nothing left to lose, the studio execs gave him an additional $2 million. Spielberg ended up reshooting almost all the scenes with the shark. In the original version, the shark appeared on screen within the first few minutes and was always visible during the attacks. All of that was reshot. In the new version, the shark didn't appear until the very end, and it worked. At the next test screening, the audience's laughter turned into screams. John Williams' music made the film even more terrifying. The film became a box office phenomenon. With a $7 million budget, Jaws grossed $470 million in theaters. It won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Original Score and Best Sound. Spielberg instantly became one of the most in-demand directors in Hollywood. World War Z was another troubled production that, despite facing harsh criticism during test screenings, eventually became a box office hit and received positive reviews from critics and audiences. However, one issue kept the film from becoming a massive success, and as a result, the planned sequel never happened. The extensive reshoots ordered after the negative test audience's reaction ballooned the film's budget to $190 million. And while the $540 million box office gross looked solid, it wasn't enough profit for the studio to greenlight a sequel. Originally, the last third of the film with Brad Pitt was completely different. It was set in Moscow. The main character's plane, which had taken off from Israel, landed in Russia, where the KGB arrested him, confiscated his phone and documents, and forced him into the army. Pitt spent months training and eventually rose through the ranks to become the best Russian zombie warrior. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt's wife, played by Mireille Enos, was staying in a refugee camp in the US and had become the kept woman of a tough guy played by Matthew Fox. After defeating all the Russian zombies in Red Square, Pitt set out to rescue his wife and take down Matthew Fox. The test audience heavily criticized the final act. The film was full of cheesy cliches, and viewers especially hated the scenes where Mireille Enos left Brad Pitt for Matthew Fox. The studio ordered the filmmakers to ditch all that, and the film went through 2 months of reshoots. In the new version, the plane landed in Wales instead of Moscow, and Pitt played a scientist dodging zombies in a clinic while trying to develop a vaccine. The reshoots added $50 million to the budget. The original budget was $140 million. For a while, there were rumors the studio would release a version with the original final act, but that never happened. So it's hard to say whether the original version was better or worse, but it definitely would have been more ridiculous. In 2019, a sequel almost entered production with David Fincher set to direct. But knowing his reputation for going over budget, the studio canceled the project just 2 weeks before filming was set to begin. At this point, it seems unlikely the sequel will ever happen. Finally, let's talk about another adventure film that went through reshoots after poor test screenings. We actually owe a lot to this movie because it paved the way for Back to the Future. If Romancing the Stone hadn't succeeded at the box office, Robert Zemeckis wouldn't have been trusted to direct that blockbuster, and his career might have ended with the Michael Douglas film. The script for Romancing the Stone was written by Diane Thomas, who was working as a waitress at the time. When Michael Douglas read it, he loved it so much he paid her $250,000, a huge amount for a first-time screenwriter, even by today's standards. After the film became a huge success, Douglas thanked her by giving her a Porsche. Tragically, just weeks before the release of the sequel, The Jewel of the Nile, Diane Thomas died in a car crash with her fiancé in that very Porsche. At first, Michael Douglas didn't plan to star in the film. He just wanted to produce it, like he had with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But every actor he approached turned it down. They thought it was just a ripoff of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Among those who declined were Clint Eastwood, Christopher Reeve, Sylvester Stallone, and Jack Nicholson. So Douglas stepped in and took the role himself. After disappointing test screenings, he took full responsibility for the movie and even said he'd quit acting if it failed. Zemeckis had an even harder time. The studio was so sure the film would flop that they fired him from directing Cocoon. That movie eventually went to Ron Howard. After losing Cocoon, Zemeckis went to Douglas with some ideas on how to fix Romancing the Stone. Douglas thought the ideas were solid, and convinced the studio to give Zemeckis $1 million for reshoots. Following Zemeckis' advice, the filmmakers cut 20 minutes from the movie, reshot the prologue and epilogue, added new scenes in the middle, and changed the male publisher to a female character. They screened the new version for test audiences, and this time the response was positive. With a $10 million budget, the film grossed $76 million in the US box office. Douglas became a major star, and Universal Pictures immediately gave Zemeckis the green light for Back to the Future. Zemeckis and Bob Gale had pitched the script for Back to the Future before Romancing the Stone, but nobody was interested back then. After Romancing the Stone, everything changed. Since then, Robert Zemeckis has personally attended every test screening of his films. He always talks to the audience, takes notes on their feedback, and reshoots or adds scenes if needed. He worked this way on both Back to the Future and Forrest Gump. Back to the Future also went through major reshoots, but not because of test screenings. It was a decision made by producer Steven Spielberg and Zemeckis himself. They decided to recast the lead role during filming, feeling the original actor wasn't right for the part. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.